So what my point in the book is, no matter what your one fine day is, good or bad, it results in a new normal, and that alters our trajectory.
Welcome to the Strokecast. A Generation X stroke survivor explores rehab, recovery, the frontiers of neuroscience, and how to peel a banana with one hand.
Hello, I'm Bill Monroe, and welcome to episode 127 of the Strokecast. This episode is sponsored by the fine folks at Modus Nova. Complete a free online assessment to find out if they can help you regain use of an affected limb. Visit strokecast.com/Modus Nova to learn more. Samir Bhide was living the American dream. I mean, he grew up in India, he came to the U.S. for school, he got his green card, and later became a U.S. citizen. He spent years working in IT around the country, and especially near Washington, D.C., with his family, where he had an awesome home. He even, of course, rounded out the dream with the awesome sports car. Of course, that all changed one fine day when Samir was 47. A genetic abnormality turned into a massive hemorrhagic stroke in his cerebellum. One by one, the pieces of his life began to fall away, and yet Samir still maintains a positive outlook on his life that is really driving his ongoing recovery. Combining Western medicine with Eastern traditions, he's built a care plan that brings him the best of both worlds. He goes into detail about it in his book, One Fine Day, and he tells us all about it in this Strokecast conversation. So now, let's meet Samir. So Samir, thanks so much for joining us on the show this week.
Well, thanks, Bill, for having me on. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Awesome. Yeah, I've been reading through your book, and you've got a really interesting perspective, and I really like your story. But before we get into your stroke story, I want to start with one line that really jumped out at me from your book, and that was not even directly stroke related. You said, "My belief was confirmed that most challenges faced by businesses are process and communications related and not people related, whether in the East or the West." And I find that stuff really interesting, as I've dealt with a lot of businesses in my professional life and in my personal life. I mean, what do you mean by that?
So I did a lot of rehab, a lot of treatments in DC and here in India. And what I observed, whether it's in Innova Fairfax Hospital System in DC where I got my treatment, or at Nimba, the holistic facility I was for 2 months in India, or where I got my rotator cuff surgery done last year here in a hospital in Mumbai. So what I found there was, it was a common theme, right? Whether it's Innova, whether it's Nimba, whether it's the hospital in Mumbai, in terms of how to treat customers or how to treat patients and stuff like that. And most of them were lack of a process or communication. So it wasn't the people or the skill set the people had. It was mostly the process. They didn't have a proper process defined. So to me, it was the observation was that it's a process problem and it's a communication problem, and people it's not a people problem. Most of the times. So that was my observation.
And that makes a lot of sense. That aligns with a lot of what I've seen. I think in my experience, working with a lot of medical offices and hospitals to a lesser extent, but hospitals as well, is that their biggest challenges tend to be sort of front end operations stuff, from communicating with patients and having the right procedures in place to what you inform people of. The actual medical care is done great, and they have their checklists and they get that done. But the bureaucratic ops side of it tends to miss. And my theory on that has been that the people who get into the medical field get into it because they are much more interested in the medicine and the people, and really dealing with the operations of a business is just not something they were necessarily ever as passionate about. Whereas people who get into business and corporations and other things like that, that has tended to be something they were more interested in to begin with anyway.
Right, right. And again, my observation, Bill, was not just medical facilities, right? Even like Nimba, where it was like a resort, right? It was like a holistic facility, operated like a resort, and they had the same exact issues what Innova Fairfax Hospital had, or the hospital here had. So whether it's a medical facility or it's a regular business, it's most of the time it's a process and communications issue. That's the way I've looked at it. And I got the same over the last 30 years. I consulted with a lot of organizations, and I had seen that throughout. And these three examples after my stroke, reconfirmed my belief.
It's fascinating how you can see those overlaps between pre-stroke life and post-stroke life that bring all those together. So speaking about that then, what was your pre-stroke life like? What were you doing in the weeks and months leading up to your stroke?
I was living the American dream. I'd successfully done my bachelor's and master's. I had worked in corporate America for 24 years. I had all the luxuries of life. I had a nice home. I had a nice family. I had a sports car, and I had all the comforts of life. So, I was literally living the American dream till the stroke. That's why I call it one fine day. That day, January 31st, 2017, when I had the stroke, and everything changed after that.
So what happened on that day?
That day I woke up, January 31st, 2017. I could work from my home, so I was just checking emails in my master bedroom. And then suddenly my left sinus, right under the left eye, started to hurt. And it was really throbbing. So that was the first sign. And then I started to get dizzy, which, I couldn't sit straight on the bed where I was doing my emails. And so I decided to lie down. And then I started to sweat. And that to me was an indication that something was wrong. So my ex-wife called the paramedics, and they came within 10-15 minutes, and they came and they took all my vitals, and all my vitals were normal, right? Because this was a genetic form of stroke, so my BP was normal, my EKG was normal, and so on and so forth. So they couldn't make sense, what was happening. And they felt that I had a severe migraine headache, and lucky for me, they decided to take me to the hospital. By the time they took me down to the ambulance, I had passed out. Once I went to the ER, even the ER doctors were perplexed, right? Because the vitals were normal, everything was normal. And they asked me if there's anything else happening to me. And apparently I told them that I feel like my left hand is floating in the air. And as soon as they heard that, they rushed me to do an emergency MRI. And that's when they discovered that a vessel in my cerebellum had burst and I was going through a brain hemorrhage. And they quickly shifted me to an operating room. And within an hour or so, I was on the operating table. So it took 10-15 minutes to get to the hospital. And within an hour, I was on the operating table going through a massive brain surgery. So to me, that has saved my life. As you know, with strokes, timing is of the essence. And the fact that the paramedics came within 10-15 minutes, they took me to the ER. Then they quickly found out through the MRI, and then I was on the operating table within 1 or 2 hours, and that probably saved my life. So that's what happened that morning.
It's an amazing story. I think what's really awesome there is that they took your concerns and your ex's concerns seriously and did the diagnostics and got you the care you needed. All too often we hear stories of similar experiences where a particular ER staff will sort of shrug their shoulders and say, "Man, probably fine, go home and sleep it off."
Right, exactly. And I went through that. Before they came, I thought I'll just take 2 Advil and sleep it off. And but once I started to sweat, then I knew something was wrong.
After your as you're going through that hospital experience, you mentioned spending a month in a coma. I mean, is that just time that is just completely lost to you? Like you slip in and then you wake up a month later and it's like no time has passed, or do you have memories from that time or from that experience in the coma?
Right. So from the time, when they took me to the ambulance downstairs when I passed out, till I recovered from the coma after 30 days, I have absolutely no recollection of what happened, barring a few instances here and there, because there's like the ICU doctor. I remember barely the therapist who was working with me. I barely remember and stuff like that. But very very few details. But I have no recollection till I reached the rehab hospital after 30 days.
It's amazing how the body and the brain respond to that sort of experience. And you've talked about your recovery starting your recovery in the US, but then you also pursued recovery in India. And how was that therapeutic experience different?
So, I spent 30 days in the rehab hospital, and then I came home in the month of April 2017. And then, I did a lot of outpatient, I continued the outpatient therapies, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, and stuff like that for a couple of months. It was extremely tough for my ex-wife to take me every time in a wheelchair, load the wheelchair in the car, take me to the hospital. We did like 60 appointments that way. So that was tough, number one. And also my costs of care started going up. Even though the insurance company was paying for most of it, my out-of-pocket expenses and co-pays and stuff like that started going up. The physical rehab I was doing was extremely useful. It was definitely useful to recover my body. But what I was going through after my stroke was mental agony. The thoughts of why me? Why is this happening to me? Used to constantly come. So the body wise, I was getting better due to extreme rehab, but my mind was flooded with thoughts and why me? And in fact, in my book, I have the second chapter in my book. I have dedicated to that, and it's called Why Me. These thoughts were constant. Every hour or every half an hour, these thoughts would come, and I would be in mental agony. Why am I suffering, and why my family has to suffer? So I decided to try something else because I wanted to also heal my mind besides healing my body. And that's when I decided to go to India. And this is a holistic facility. And I was also very clear to them. I said, look, I don't want to come 8,000 miles away and just do yoga and meditation and stuff like that. I want to continue doing the physical rehab. So they said, the doctor there said that the facility is a holistic facility. So they have the regular rehab and the gym and stuff like that, and they have also the yoga and meditation and other Eastern, treatments like acupuncture and so on and so forth. So once I heard that, I thought I'll give it a try, and I had never done these things before in my life, whether it's meditation or yoga. So I thought, I needed some relief to my mind. So I said, let's try going there and continue doing the physical rehab as well.
There's a lot of things you said in there that are really important. I think one that jumps out at me is the reference to it being holistic. I think often when we hear holistic in the US, we think that means just sort of the alternative medicine, whether that's going to be the yoga and meditation to, diet and things like that. But when you say when you're talking holistic, it can include that, but it also then includes traditional medicine as well, and or traditional Western medicine as well, and that's what makes it holistic, is that it's encompassing all those traditions.
Right. That's the way I look at it, because it's extremely critical to do both, and I stress this in my book many times that you have to do both because they both complement each other. And because there's one camp which thinks only Western medicine or technology and innovation can work, and there's the other camp where only yoga and alternate practices are the best. Western medicine doesn't have the answer to all the ills, nor does the holistic treatments. You have to do both. And I'm a living proof because I've done both. And that's the part I constantly stress in my book, that you have to have balance of doing both. You can't just do one.
At this facility, then, were they focused on stroke survivors, or was having a stroke survivor there sort of a unique thing for them? Or what was their rest of their clientele there for? Or what was the rest of their clientele like?
Right. So I was unique, and I call I joke with my mom. I was there almost 2.5 months. I joke with my mom that I'm a legend at Nimba, because normally people come there for like 5-7 days, get a refresh, take some massages, do some meditation and stuff like that, and maximum they stays 5 to 7 days. And I was there for 2.5 months, so I was definitely unique. The facility is for all kinds of people, not just for people suffering, or people with disabilities. It's for all kinds of people. People who are stressed out, people who need 5 to 7 days of get fresh and go back to their work. But there were lots of other patients who had like other kinds of illnesses, like IBS, and somewhere treating addiction to drugs and so on and so forth. So there were all kinds of people, but I was definitely the unique one.
What was the most valuable thing you got from your time there?
I learned the art of meditation. When I say I learned, I'm still learning. You can never learn it, but I got introduced to the art of mindfulness meditation, and that was a big thing for me, because it helped me calm down. That was my biggest problem for the previous 6 months. So meditation was definitely a key discovery for me there. And then also yoga techniques there. I used to always think that yoga consisted of these tough exercises and poses and stuff like that. But yoga is much more than that. It has a lot of these other techniques, especially focused on breathing and stuff like that. So between meditation and those yoga techniques, those were the two biggest discoveries over there for me.
I've had a number of folks on within recent months who have been involved in yoga, or even teaching yoga after stroke, and just how it's made a difference, even something as basic as breathing techniques to help manage anxiety and other things that they experience just out in the world.
Right.
You're able to have a fascinating perspective here, especially having been born in India and with having spent so much time there these last couple of years and with family there, but also having spent much of your professional life in the U.S. and having gone to school in the U.S. So I'm fascinated about your experience in observing disability in the way it's approached in the two cultures. I mean, I spent a week in Pune back in 2019 for work, and
oh, really? That's where I was, Bill. That's where I was born, actually. And then when I was 6 months old, I moved to Mumbai. Strange.
Oh, okay. Awesome. It was a fascinating experience for me, just riding around in the car between just the hotel and the office, and just talk about just a festival for the senses of just seeing all the people and everything going on around, and just the level of activity was just astounding. One of the things that did jump out at me was that I don't think I saw anybody out and about with a visible disability, and it certainly didn't look like most of the buildings or even the sidewalks were going to be wheelchair accessible or anything like that. I mean, obviously I was just there for a week and had a very small view into life, but how would you compare the challenges that folks with disabilities face in places like Pune and Mumbai versus the challenges folks with disabilities face in the U.S.?
Sure. So, the number one, Bill, there are disabilities here, But unfortunately, they don't have the facilities. They don't have the the like the stuff we have back home. The elevators are designed for you have the ramps and you have all kinds of help with the disabilities. Unfortunately, it's not the case here because it's a developing country, and so that's the biggest difference to me. That the kind of help we have back home in the US is incredible. No matter which facility you go, there's always a bar to hold, and that's mandated by law and stuff like that. But in India, it's up to the facility to decide if they want to keep that bar or no. So again, the focus here, the culture or the economy is not ready like the way it is back home with disability. So there are definitely so much life is we try to make life much easier back home for people with disabilities, no matter what disabilities those are, and that's something this country is continuing to work on as they develop. But right now, there's not.
How would you describe the cultural acceptance of people with disabilities within India? Is it something that people are willing to be seen as disabled, or is there, do folks sort of, is there a struggle with acceptance, or what is the general, aside from the physical challenges, what do you observe as sort of the cultural challenges around disability?
Right. So, in general, Bill, there is less acceptance that you have a disability. There's some shame attached to the fact that you can't be normal, and that's a cultural thing. And I think back home also you'll get some people, but most people are accept people accept your disability. But here there is definitely less acceptance, and it's slowly improving, but there is less acceptance, and there's definitely shame attached to what is going on.
With all of that, I mean, your experience at NIMBA was great, and so much so that you went back 2 more times for therapy that you were able to get in India that was not necessarily available to you in the DC area.
That is correct. It's available, but it's not cost effective to do it there.
And that's one of the things people don't think about a lot, is that not only is therapy, and recovery and stuff, it's not in the US 100% covered by insurance. You have all the out-of-pocket stuff, while at the same time your entire source of income has often been drastically reduced or completely cut off in a single moment. It presents a lot of challenges. Obviously, we've been going through all this around COVID-19 as well. So you start your recovery, you start going through it. And I know one of the key reasons I haven't been back in PT in quite some time now is not only the whole insurance question, but also with COVID-19 out there, it's not something that I've felt the need to go for that exposure when PT is even available. But how has COVID-19 affected your recovery?
Yes. So I came to India in February of 2020. I had a non-brain related surgery on my right arm. I had a massive rotator cuff tear, so I had to take care of that, and it was on my good hand. So there was no way I could have done it in Virginia. So I decided to come here for that in February of 2020. And then I was supposed to come back in June of 2020, but I got stuck here because of COVID. So life has definitely affected for me because I used to go to physical therapy appointments before, and now because of COVID, I started doing video physical therapy appointments and so on and so forth. So life definitely got affected.
It's also pretty much why you've stayed on this trip for upwards of a year now.
Correct. So I was supposed to come back in June. And in June, the COVID cases were quite high back home. So let this die down a little bit. So I thought I'll wait till September, October, and then came September, October, and the cases were higher than June, and it didn't make sense to come in the winter anyways. So I decided to stay put, and I made a call in October of last year that at least I have some help here, and I have my sister and mom here. So I decided to stay here till April, and I'm hoping to come back first week of April.
Looks like hopefully things are now starting to turn with broader vaccine distribution. And I know up here in the King County area in Seattle, I think we're starting to see some lower infection rates last time I checked the numbers. So hopefully, I know things overall are going to get, the numbers are going to get higher before they get a lot better. But hopefully we are starting to be able to turn the corner on that. So you mentioned the shoulder injury on your unaffected arm. Was that due to just overuse from that unaffected side having to do absolutely everything, or was there a separate trauma involving your shoulder?
No, so actually the doctor did say that since the stroke, I've been using the right hand a lot. So definitely because of that, it caused the rotator cuff to tear. That was one reason. But also before that, I was a sports person. So I played a lot of racquetball and tennis while in the US. And I used to play competitive badminton and cricket here while I grew up in India. So I used the right arm for that. So between that and between the overuse of the arm over the last 3 years, and the fact that I turned 50, that also could factor in. So because of these factors, the doctor believed that the rotator cuff tear happened.
All of that adds up. I remember, the very morning when I woke up with my stroke and my arm felt funny, I figured that it was just something where I had hurt myself in my sleep because I was in my mid 40s, and that's a thing that happens. Well, yeah, I think that's one of the things that people don't think about a lot is that not only was your shoulder already stressed due to the athletics, but also when you suddenly have to use that for everything and in very different ways. I mean, I think we see that a lot with survivors' knees and hips as well, where suddenly you've got these joints which are now taking on anywhere from 75 to 100% more weight bearing than they've ever had to deal with before, as the affected side just can't contribute as much. So the book is called One Fine Day, and you talked about writing that in reference to that one fine day where suddenly all of this stuff happened, all of this particular journey began. Why did you decide to write the book?
So, I was extremely grateful and lucky, right, that I survived. And, I went through a lot. I had a lot of, different things I did in whether in Eastern medicine or Western medicine, body, mind, spirit, and stuff like that. And I had absolutely no idea before my stroke, what it takes to heal your mind and body. And I wanted to, give back to society somehow, right? I wanted to help others. And because I had gone through so many experiences, I just wanted to share them with others. And I had lots of stories, experiences, tips, and lessons learned in my journey, and I thought it will be helpful to others. So I wanted to do that, and the best way for me to do that was to write the book. And now you may be wondering, right, how I was supposed to write this book, right? I could type with only one hand. I couldn't sit on a computer for more than 10 minutes at a stretch, and I was not a writer, right? So how was I supposed to write it? So, writing this book, helping others was my calling, the way I call it. So I wanted to get it done somehow. So I found a way to do that. So I found, a ghostwriter back in the US, and we collaborated. I was the author with stories and experiences, and I would draft something, I'll send it to the ghostwriter, and he would then fine tune it and send it my way. Then I'll add, delete to it, and send it back to him. and so on and so forth. So we wrote 11 chapters like that over the last 1 year. And what it did to me, Bill, was that it allowed me not to be in front of the computer for more than required. So I could do things in spurts. So when he sent me stuff, I could add, delete to it, but I was not sitting on my computer for hours, which was impossible for me physically. So that's why I decided to use the ghostwriter, and we collaborated well. So it was kind of a 50-50 effort. I would write something, then he would add to it. I would add, delete to it, and so on and so forth. So it worked pretty well. So that's why I decided to write the book, because my entire goal for writing the book was to help others going through any adversity. And it's not just medical adversity, it could be anything. And that's why I'm calling it One Fine Day, is anything can happen to anybody, good or bad. So it's not just only bad things. So the bad things are obviously, medical condition like me, or a divorce, or a layoff, or whatever. And the good things could be things like getting married, having a kid, and so on and so forth. So what my point in the book is, no matter what your one fine day is, good or bad, it results in a new normal, and that alters our trajectory, whatever it is. So we have to accept that new normal, and we have to accept that with grace and gratitude. And that's what I've tried to do over the last 4 years. And I wanted to share those experiences with others, so I found a way to write it. So I call myself an accidental author.
That just sort of defines so much of sort of the way many of us live our lives today, as an accidental author or an accidental something else, because you never had any idea that this was the trajectory it was going to take, that one fine day was just going to turn everything in a different direction.
Exactly.
So when you're working with Ghostwriter, do you feel that your ghostwriter not only was able to capture your story, but also your voice?
See that was critical for me, right? So I interviewed a couple of ghostwriters, and I wanted to make sure that my voice is there in the book, right? Ghostwriter can only do so much, no matter how good this person is. So I made sure that whatever we wrote, that my voice is part of that writing, and there's no way the ghostwriter would know what my voice is. Only I knew. So that's why I added, deleted a lot, and I wrote a lot myself. And that's one thing which I thought initially that I could just hand over the notes to the ghostwriter, and the ghostwriter will write it. So 80% of the time they will write it, and 20% I have to make some changes. But it actually worked out that it was a 50-50 effort, because again I wanted my voice in the writing, and it's not any ghostwriter's fault that there's no way they can have the same voice that I do. So I did more than the 20% which I had thought. But at the end of the day, after we finish, my voice is definitely in the book.
Yeah, I get that sense, having read. I'm probably about halfway through the book, and listening to you now, I can definitely hear that that voice that I see on the page as well. And that's one of those fascinating skills for a ghostwriter, is that sure, the grammar and the spelling and the story structure and the plot structure and all of that stuff is super important, but that's sort of just the basic entry level into being a writer. To be able to actually partner with somebody, work with them, meet with them virtually or in person or whatever, and then be able to write in their voice, that is just such a difficult skill to acquire.
Absolutely, it is. No doubt.
Was your ghostwriter in the U.S. or were they also in India?
The ghostwriter was in Pittsburgh. So we did mostly a remote collaboration. So we haven't met to date. One fine day we will.
Awesome. So it doesn't really sound like the process would have been much different had you been in the D.C. area the whole time. Probably still would have been doing this whole thing virtually.
Exactly, and that's one of the reasons I decided to extend my stay, because I launched the book in December, and I wanted to make sure that there are lots of marketing and PR activities associated with the launch. So I wanted to make sure that that doesn't get affected. So I talked to my marketing team in the US, and they basically said the same thing, right? Whether you are 3 miles away from a studio in DC or you're 8,000 miles away in India, you still have to do Zoom or virtual meetings. And the same thing with writing, right? I was able to write, and even if I was in DC, I would have done the same thing like I did while I was here, writing, sending through emails, and then occasionally we'll have a call and stuff like that.
So if another survivor is thinking about writing a book, what would your advice to them be?
I think my advice number one is, there are lots of ideas, Bill, which will come to your mind, but those are just ideas. The first step you have to do is take those ideas and try to see if you can have an outline for the book, and that's the key outline. So if you can outline the book, then you can write it. So that would be my advice. Right up front, evaluate all these ideas, take a few ideas, and do an outline. If you can do an outline, you can write the book. Otherwise, you can't write the whole book. So outlining is very, very important.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. One of my whenever I go ahead and craft a training content for work or build a PowerPoint slide deck or something like that, my first step is not to open up the software. It's to, open up a note-taking tool of some sort and just start getting ideas down and just starting to outline what I want to do to meet my goals. How has your corporate experience informed your experience with writing the book?
Good question. Very definitely. You think this may be crazy, but actually, I had a project plan for the launch of the book. So right from the planning stage of the book to actually writing the book, and actually I call it the implementation of the book and post implementation of the book. So I maintained a project plan and I acted according to the project plan. So my business skills definitely help me get organized. But in terms of writing, it also helped me because I was constantly looking from a business angle, right? It was not just a creative author thinking creative thoughts. I was looking from a very practical, data oriented. What I'm writing, well, whether this makes sense, and so definitely it helped me in my journey in this writing process.
Oh, that's great. I think project plan for doing a book, that makes perfect sense to me, and maybe that's I'm just still ensconced in the corporate world, so maybe that's that's right. Why. But if you thinking about it, all of our physical therapists, our physiatrists, our medical team who are working with us in rehab, they all had project plans for our recovery, whether or not we saw them or not, based on defining what the patient's goals are, what exercises you're going to do with the patient to work them through it, to ultimately get them to that goal, to doing periodic check-ins and assessments. So this is the idea of a project plan. Is even if you haven't spent life in corporate world and in project management and consulting and all those things, having a project plan is certainly not something that is alien to those of us who have been through these stroke experiences. And I encourage folks to go ahead and ask your therapists about the recovery plan and the treatment plan they have in place for you, because even if they don't just volunteer to share it, they are usually thrilled to actually talk about that process with you.
Right. Very well said.
And that brings us to our hack of the week. But first, let's talk about our sponsor, Motus Nova. MOTUSNOVA. Finding it hard to recover at home after a stroke? Well, Motus Nova may be able to help. You can take the free online assessment at strokecast.com/MotusNova to find out. Motus Nova makes devices to help folks with stroke or other brain injuries regain the use of their affected limbs. For example, the Modus Hand is an AI-powered robotic exoskeleton that helps users exercise and play games, similar to the way an occupational or a physical therapist might manipulate the survivor's limb. It helps survivors get in the thousands of repetitions that we always talk about that they need to do to form new neural pathways. It can assist with hand movements, or it can resist them to really provide the personalized exercise experience. Interested? Well, visit strokecast.com/modusnova to learn more. Get 10% off your first month with the code Strokecast if you sign up today. So get started at strokecast.com/modusnova. And now, back to Samir and the hack of the week. One of the other our regular features is, of course, the hack of the week, and I really like how in your book you use the Indian equivalent word for that, the Jugaad, Jugaad. Really like that, and described even your mother as the queen of Jugaad.
Right.
So what would your Jugaad be for our rest of for folks living with disabilities today?
Right. So, I've thought about this, and there are plenty of jugaads, as a lot of Indians would know what jugaad stands for. It's exactly what in America we say hacks. So there are plenty of things, the physical aspects of jugaad, which will help people with disabilities. But for me, I found out that the biggest hack, I mean, it's not a hack, but biggest discovery for me was meditation, as I said before, and that helped me calm my mind. So I will highly advise your listeners who are having disabilities to give meditation a try, because that is something which is kind of like a jugaad for the mind, and that helps you calm down. It helps your mind process things, and physically obviously you have to do rehab and stuff, but meditation definitely helps you calm your mind and spirit, no question about that. So that to me is a jugaad. And Bill, I say this in the book, this meditation which I discovered is for everybody. It's not just the people suffering from illness or people with disabilities. It is for everybody, every person, because like especially now with the COVID thing, there are lots of anxieties out there, lots of stress happening. So this is a tool for everybody to leverage, and you can. The beauty of this is you don't need any fancy clothes or fancy membership. You can do it in the privacy of your house, and you can do it anytime you want. And that, again, the point is it is not just for people with medical illness. It's for anybody to reduce anxieties. Sure. So typically, I do mindfulness meditation, and here's one of the business things which I've applied to meditation. So while at Nimba, there was a yoga teacher who taught me the meditation, and he was extremely good. There was something about him. He exemplified calmness. So when I got back to the US after 2.5 months, I wanted to continue doing meditation with him. But obviously we were 8,000 miles apart. But I wanted to do meditation with him. So I used my business skills. I had worked remotely before. So I asked him whether he has done any meditation sessions remotely, and he had not. And I said, would you give it a try? And he said, sure. So we started doing remote meditation sessions, guided meditation sessions over Skype or over WhatsApp. And we started doing that in December of 2017. And till date, I do that once a week. So I've leveraged my, what I've done in business, remote calls and stuff like that. And I've done meditation. So not only I do that once a week with him, but every day I try to do meditation. Either I use an app, Headspace is one of the apps I like, or I use some YouTube videos, or just listen to music and stuff like that. So I do that on a daily basis, and once a week I do this remote guided meditation. So no matter where he is or where I am, whether I'm in US, I'm in India, he was in Nimba before, now he's in the southern Indian city of Chennai. So no matter where we are, we do this remote session once a week. And then I do a lot of mindfulness meditation, just listening to music. And that to me is also, I've discovered to be very, very useful. So between the Headspace app, the various mind guided YouTube videos, and just listening to music, these are the ways I try to do my meditation. Acceptance is the key. No matter what you're facing, good or bad, acceptance of that situation is the key. It all starts with acceptance, and that to me was a challenge for the first 6 to 8 months after the stroke. And meditation helped me, and also talking to a clinical psychologist. I had never done that before. I always used to discount these kinds of touchy feely things because I was a hard data driven person. But talking to a psychologist and doing meditation, help me calm my mind. So my advice to your listeners is that do both, and do both in a balance. And as I've said before, and that gives you the best chance to heal your mind and body and spirit.
Samir, that's fantastic. This has been really great. I'm really glad I got up to do this at 6 a.m. This has been a great way to start the day. If folks want to know more about you and what you're up to, where should they go?
Yeah, so they can go to my website, my first name and last name, SAMEERBHIDE.com. So that's one place they can find all kinds of information about me. There are photos there. There are, I call them Samirisms. These are lessons learned from my journey. So they can see that. They can have information on the book and so on and so forth. So that's the best place to get information is my website.
Fantastic. And we'll have links to that over at strokecast.com/onefine-day, along with links to the book and the other relevant resources.
Excellent.
So, Samir, thank you so much. This has been awesome. Yeah, I encourage folks to go out and check out the book.
Great. Thanks a lot. This was really fun, Bill. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I really like that if I ever get tired of the hack of the week, I can switch to calling it a Jugad of the week. Now, we recorded this episode actually back in February, so by now Samir is back in the U.S. and he is enjoying what I hope is a lovely Virginia spring. I like the way he combined Eastern and Western medicine. Longtime listeners obviously know that I come down heavily on the side of science and techniques that have been proven to be effective. And typically, there are no shortcuts to recovery. You got to do the work. You got to get your reps in. You've got to follow the program. When considering alternative treatments and alternative therapies, what I always suggest is that first, you got to consider if they're safe. If they are safe, if they're not going to hurt you, then you can consider if they will financially or temporally interfere with proven medicine. And by that I mean, if they're going to cost tons of money, you don't have to go down an alternative route. Or if that alternative therapy, whatever it is just going to take up so much of your time that you can't do traditional therapy, then it's probably a bad idea. But if that alternative treatment is not going to interfere significantly from a financial standpoint or from a timing standpoint, and you can still pursue your traditional therapy, and they're safe, well, go for it. And that's what I like about Samir's approach. He didn't abandon traditional Western physical therapy or occupational therapy. He continued that work, but he went to India to learn and try additional things. And this system and this combination, it works for him. Samir's decisions also say something important about the cost of medical treatment for the individual in the United States. His inpatient stay at Nimba was significantly cheaper than it would have been in the US. And when he had to choose where to get surgery on the rotator cuff in his shoulder, again, he went to India for that. It was just that much more affordable. I mean, granted, he also had the advantage of having family there when he was down to no fully functional limbs, so it wasn't just a cost thing, but he was still able to get high-quality surgical treatment in India and save a ton of money in the process. The other important takeaway here is that Samir was able to write his book working with Ghostwriter from the other side of the world. I mean, doing that from India certainly wasn't the original plan, but as we all know, COVID, of course, changed everybody's plans. Yet the right approach and technology was within everyone's reach to make it possible. As vaccines continue to roll out across the world, and I have gotten my first dose of Moderna, yay, I'm excited about that. But I mean, as they continue to roll out and we start to see declines in the infection rate, I hope it happens soon. A lot of folks are going to be returning to offices all over the planet. Many of us, of course, do prefer working from home. And really, in my case, I've mostly been working from home since, about 1998 or so. And with a brief exception from about 2014 to 2016, where I had to regularly go into an office, I just much prefer working from home. And that was even, of course, pre-stroke, when I still had all of my limbs and whatnot. But of course, for many people with disabilities, going into the office every day just isn't feasible. And you know what COVID-19 has taught us, besides the wide assortment of masks that are out there? It's taught us that we don't have to go into the office in order to be productive. If you need to work from home to accommodate your disability, don't let an employer get away with saying you have to come into the office. Over the past year, millions of people have proven you don't have to be in the office to get stuff done. Work from home is absolutely a reasonable accommodation for a whole lot of folks. And now we know that it doesn't put an unreasonable burden on employers. This past year has proven that. And now that we've proven that, I hope that this terrible era of COVID ushers in a new world of opportunities for disabled people who previously were unable to earn a reasonable living. So I'll stop ranting about that for now, but keep that in mind in the back of your head. You can pick up Samir's book, One Fine Day, on Amazon or wherever you find books. That link and many others are in the show notes at strokecast.com/onefineday. And of course, the Strokecast newsletter is going to launch this summer of 2021. Be sure to subscribe for free at strokecast.com/news so you can continue to get updates about the show and hear from previous guests, as well as just read additional news items that are relevant to the stroke community. And of course, as always, don't get best, get better. Thanks a lot. I'm Bill Monroe, and I'll talk to you soon.
The Strokecast, Bill Monroe, and Bill's guests provide general information and entertainment, not medical advice. Please do not make any changes to your treatment plan or the execution of your treatment plan without first consulting your personal doctor or medical team. The Strokecast is a proud production of the Currently Speaking Podcast Network.